Hello and welcome to the Athletic Mastery Podcast with myself, Chris, on it. And as we always do, we bring on a great array of guests from coaches to athletes and other sports professionals to help you enhance your performance elements. And today, my guest today, he's a coach, he's a former player, and he makes a huge difference to not just the performance of the people he works with, but over 95% of athletes that my guest today does work with actually go on to get the success that they deserve. And it's an absolute privilege to have Euon Brown on the podcast today from Pro Sports Cybernetics. I can't even talk this morning. So Euon, welcome to the show, and thanks very much for coming on.
Hi mate, how you doing, Chris? You well?
Yeah, I'm very good, mate. I'm very good, thanks. But yeah, this is obviously a pod that we've been trying to organise for a while, and it's one I've been really looking forward to. And doing the due diligence, obviously we've got a couple of mutual connections as well through the tight community that is sport. Scarily, you're only up in Manchester last week speaking to a mutual friend in Wayne Richardson, who's another one who's doing great stuff. Just want to give everyone a bit of an introduction to who Euon is, how you got into sport, and a little bit about what you're up to these days.
Sure. Yeah, no, so it goes way back. I mean, I first started playing football as early as I can remember, sort of 5 or 6 years old. Got an older brother and one of his mates who's actually a business partner now. He told me the story that he's like, you're doing kick-ups like at the age of like ridiculous age and doing really well. And he's like, I remember me and your brother looking and saying, he might do something, he might be all right. I have no recollection of this whatsoever. But I suppose before me, my mum, she was heavily into athletics, and I think that has its stand as well. I think a little bit in the genetics and the DNA. She actually played youth netball for England as well. So for sure, I think that there's a little bit in there probably. But yeah, I mean, I started off as early as 5 or 6, as I say. Got into my first academy, Paul Elliott Academy, when I was about 8 or 9. I remember I was in primary school, and I think it all just kind of took off from there, really. Being honest, I didn't particularly work hard. I think it was just something that was just given to me. I wasn't bothered. I probably was in the cages playing the least, when you're growing up and that, playing in the street cages the least. But then when I got to about an age of about 14, 15, went on to QPR, about 15, 16, I think by that age, signed for QPR, and just something just clicked into me, and I just became the hardest working person you could imagine, doing extra training sessions, extra work. Went on to play around that kind of same period of time, well, I'll take a step back actually. So I was actually offered England under 16 schoolboy trials. I got injured for a year. Yeah, mate, I got injured for a year, and I was out. And that's at the same time that I was about to sign for West Ham. So I remember conversations, my mum and my football manager at the time having conversations with Harry Redknapp actually having a conversation with myself about, like, he'd been watching me and seeing the type of player that I was. So obviously I was super buzzing about that. I was only a young kid, and then boom, got an injury. This was about 13, 14. So I'm jumping about a little bit. But then year came round, managed to recover, didn't get that England call up again. Like, naturally, as you would expect, the competition is fierce. But Grenada came in asking if, well, first of all, I went there on holiday, just as a complete random holiday. Ended up playing in this like completely waterlogged pitch. It was carnage. I never ever thought that Grenadians were into football. I thought it was cricket, so I didn't bring my football boots. Some locals were like, do you want to jump in this tournament? Like, can you play? And I was, cheekily, I was like, yeah, I could play a bit. There's like, right, we're sticking you up front. Now, primarily, I'm a defensive player. No football boots. They gave me like size 11 football boots. It was ridiculous. So I remember having to tie like the laces around my ankle and my leg in order for it just about fit. Like, bearing in mind I'm like a size 9 football boot, size 10, like absolute push size 10 with a little bit of growing space. And I ended up being the top scorer in that tournament, in that local tournament. And that happened to be in like the national like the national, it's called like the Tantine Ground. So like one of like the places where the national team train in Grenada. It just so happened that the first team manager was there, Alistair de Bellet of the senior team. And he said to me, he goes, I'm not going to do the accent, but he goes, are you Grenadian? I think so, like kind of thing. And it just kind of literally, fell into my lap from there. So they got the passports done, as quick as you could. Obviously, my family got, Grenadian heritage in my family, and that through my dad. Dad was born and raised there, and my mum's got Grenadian heritage. So her, granddad was born and raised, and grandma and stuff like that. So I've got strong heritage and links back to the Caribbean. They got everything sorted out, and from that moment on, to be fair, I was playing youth international football all the way through to a senior. So it's a bit mind blowing. I put the work in for sure, but just kind of sat in my lap really.
That is absolutely awesome, and it just basically from going on holiday to all of a sudden getting an international call up. That is pretty mental. That is mental. That is awesome. That's one hell of a backstory. That is absolutely
yeah. To be fair, but I mean, I say it fell in my lap. Obviously, I would have had to be prepared for it in terms of the previous training that I would have done and all of my experience, etc., etc. And obviously, they did see something in me. So, I'm not trying to flog it off and just say I was some two-bob player. Obviously, I had a bit of talent, but it's just insane the way that life works. I think sometimes, yeah,
you're not wrong. And working as a scout for Blackpool at the moment, we, a lot of it is the luck of the draw, and we take players on or I've recommended players sometimes, and I'm sometimes thinking, should I have actually recommended that player? Because they can have a great game against one opposition, but then they come up against a different opponent, and it's a completely different kettle of fish altogether, because obviously different abilities, different days. We don't know what's going on behind the mindset of the player, and and that, I think that's another key element of coaching as well, isn't it? Is in terms of the mindset of a player, and I mean, obviously, when you being looked at by West Ham, and you've got someone like Harry Redknapp that's coming to, having the conversation with you, that must have really said something about, what he thought of you, and the opportunities that he was willing to sort of invest into you going forward with that.
It's absolutely mind blowing. I was a football kind of geek. Do you know what I mean? So growing up, Football Manager, as it's now called, Championship Manager, it was back then. So I knew all the players, I knew who was coming through, I knew the Wonder Kid. So I was just a football nerd, football geek. Rarely went out unless it was training or something to do with football. So for sure, when someone like Harry Redknapp comes up to you and approaches you, it's mind blowing for sure, because I for sure did not understand my ability or my capabilities. Definitely at a young age, for sure, I didn't. And a great segue, to be fair, into the coaching, because that's what got me into where I'm at now in terms of wanting to help players. I think primarily in the start, it was players who were facing setbacks. But I kind of had a little think about it, had a little dig down. And I realized actually this is, often a setback could come from a mindset. And that's what I realized. So I went and gone and got my diploma in psychology, and I started just putting material together, literally creating many things from scratch. A lot of things were from mentors and stuff like that as well. But just started putting together just a significant program in order to help players like myself, which then grew to helping anyone and as many people as I could, to just be better. And then again, it went through the roof, to be fair, after we got our first couple of results.
That's pretty awesome, and the fact, and it's not just results you're getting either. It's some very, very good ones at that. From right from the get go, I suppose, all the way up to like the senior athletes, isn't it? I mean, because when you've got when you've got a high conversion rate of between 80 and 95% of your athletes being scouted or going on to make it, that sort of says a lot. And I think a lot of that comes down to fact that obviously you've had the experience yourself, you're able to relate to the players a lot more. And also one of the things that I was really, really intrigued about was the behavioral side of the game that you work at with the players, which is something that I think is really overlooked, and not a lot of technical coaches really get the understanding of. So what was it that sort of made you utilize that as something that you wanted to incorporate within your coaching toward with the players?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always thought about, if I am going to coach, I want to deliver like a holistic kind of program, covering absolutely every base, because I looked at myself and looked at what I needed. And funny enough, a lot of these young players now are doing like athletics coaching. And again, I said it kind of fell into my lap. So I was doing, your 2-3 mile runs with my mum at running school when I was like 7, 8. So I suppose all of that was kind of already bred into me. I was part of swimming clubs, I was heavily into sport, and my mum just pushed me and pushed me and pushed me, which I'm super grateful for. In terms of like just the players and why I decided to do what I was doing was because, as I say, I knew what I did in order to get there and the hunger that I needed to have. I also spoke to other players, so other mates, other ex-pros before I started on the coaching journey. So I knew what was required once I'd had those conversations, and then it was just about putting it all together and making it, I suppose, marketable and sellable. I still don't think that parents, particularly, right? Players, of course, but parents, I still don't think that parents realize how important the mindset side of things are, and how tough it can be. Often, you mentioned about coaches, not really caring, just getting a buck. And, for me, I do things very, very different. I won't just, in fact, I refuse to just work with a player like, dude, what you up to? Can we get started tomorrow? No, we can't. No, I need to get to know you a bit more. I need to find out what's happening. Just like if you used to go into the doctors, they're not just going to give you an injection just because you said you're not feeling well. So in a very similar way, I knew that I wanted to work with ideally top players. And in order to do that, I didn't need to be sort of hungry or greedy to go and work with players and go and bring players on board. Actually, I knew it was more of like a cultivation stage and model to just slowly build up players. I knew it'd take time. I knew I might not be the quickest one out of the blocks or the most famous one there, because what I'm doing does take time. But I was all about results, and it's starting to really shine through. So for that, I'm super grateful.
Yeah, I mean, it's key. It is key, obviously, taking your time to, as a coach and a player, really, to do your due diligence on the individual. Because one thing I've certainly noticed is, back in the days, just starting out, it was a case of, I'd take anyone and everyone. But now it comes with experience, doesn't it? There has to be a procedure where they come in. It's the initial consultation, like you say. You've got to know that player, and they've got to understand what it is that they're coming in. So they come in, get the assessment, you find out the background. Because you'll see, I'm sure, down in London, there's so many players that they'll go on trial for their 8 weeks, they'll get released, and they won't even be given any feedback. And that's the scary thing. And then the parents are coming to you as a coach and saying, look, he's just been released by this club. He's got interest from this other club. What do we need? What does he need to do? And as a coach, you're sort of thinking to yourself, well, I actually don't know, because the coach from the club he's recently trialed hasn't given any feedback to help support the development of that player. And again, I suppose that also comes with building your network, and I'm sure you'll have contacts within academies, like I've got here up in the Northwest, and then we're able to liaise with these people. And I suppose that's the beauty of having the experience. And sometimes it's not a bad thing not being the most famous face, for example, i.e., a Martin Noble football academy, for example. Everyone's going to want to go there just because he's a West Ham legend, he's won the badge, he's played for England. Whereas you got good people like yourself and me that have not necessarily done as much as what Mark's done, but we've done a lot more work on getting to know the player, understanding the player, which, again, I'm not going to say he doesn't know the player, just as an example, but
of course,
we've been on the ground a lot more than what someone like he has, for example, because obviously his focus would have been on playing and mainly playing, as is right with a lot of professionals as well. So
yeah, no, you're spot on. I think yeah, one of the advantages that I do have, I think, over others is that due to my career ending early, and you might have heard the sigh there, it still pains now. I don't think that pain will ever go away. But I suppose one of the advantages is that I've had all of these years of experience to really think about what I want to do and cultivate, learn, speak to people, and then build, rather than do it in kind of maybe what might be a panic state. So I know a lot of footballers sometimes it's just like, oh my gosh, like what am I going to do now? I've spoken to a lot of footballers who are similar kind of age to me, that kind of retirement age now, and it's just like, mate, I don't know what I'm going to do. Some return to normal jobs like football never ever existed. So in some ways I do feel privileged that I am in this position now, with the ability to help those players along through the experience, through the learning, and of course through the coaching and the ways that we do it and the methods that we have, and the way that we deliver what we deliver.
Yeah, and being in South London as well, obviously it's a hotbed for footballers. It also unfortunately attracts the wrong sort of attention for crime, sort of when you're looking at like the Crystal Palaces, the Millwalls, and that sort of. When it comes obviously with your behavioural program, do you ever tend to notice that children or athletes coming from certain areas sort of have that tag wrongfully and have to sort of try and shake it off in terms of how they conduct themselves around the place as well?
Sure. So, I mean, look, I think, first of all, a lot of people don't quite understand when we say behavior change. They think, okay, I must be badly behaved. We're talking about behavioral change like in its simplest form. So we're talking about starting from the root, which is the mind. And we're talking about decision making. And yes, like down the road, it can mean trouble, whether in someone's career, whether in the streets, in their personal life, whatever it may be. But we go to like the root cause of just the mind. Just simply break it down. The mind, decision making, what makes you feel good, what makes you what makes you not feel good, what's a sensible decision to make. So to be fair, I don't pick up a lot of players who are kind of in trouble in that sense, in terms of their decision making and their life choices. This is more around players already probably either in a good space where they are as professionals or want to be professionals, but it's more around building that self-belief and that confidence. I do remember one particular player who's just signed his pro in Portugal, and he was probably one of the closest to sort of being frustrated and potentially going the wrong way. But again, he was in a good space in terms of he wasn't getting into trouble, but it could have been along those lines. Again, another player who was at Brentford, the parents, or who's at Brentford at the moment, his parents were worried about him potentially going the wrong way. So I do often think if somebody has already gone the wrong way, then maybe it's like a bit of a higher intervention that they need, even though for sure I have no doubt that my methods and that our techniques would work. It just so happens, I think, that we happen to get players who are on the way in terms of their mindset, not necessarily in trouble, but more sort of lacking confidence or self-belief on and off the pitch. But generally, they seem to be good players. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the players who are getting in trouble, for sure, that will often have a deep root cause. I never think there's smoke without fire. Yeah. So it's one of them ones where if they are in trouble, then again we would go back to like the earliest kind of slot or time period where they were facing challenges, and again generally you'd be able to pick it up and find it. But yeah, South London, it is that place where you've got to have that balance. I've had a lot of players and friends maybe when I was a little bit younger who've ended up going the wrong way. So it is that fine balance between talent and just making some wrong choices, which can really end up in a bad place. So we kind of got the best of both worlds in South London. But for sure, it's a hotbed in terms of talent. I can say that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. We just have to look at the likes of Marco Guai that's come through over the last sort of few years. Eberechi Eze, absolutely fantastic players, and and they've spoken about having the right people around them, being in that community, which is key. And one thing, especially when it comes to identifying the player, it is obviously gaining making sure that they understand their why, isn't it? First and foremost, I want to be a footballer. Well, why do you want to be a footballer? Because I want to provide for my family. But what is it that you've got that you're going to do, or what decisions are you going to change in order for you to get there? And it comes to getting that structure, doesn't it? Which it's something I've started recently with some of my players, and it is literally getting a pen and paper down, saying, like, Monday, I'm going to do this task, and this task, and I'm going to make sure I've ticked it off, because it's almost like that confidence boost, isn't it? That when you've done a task, whether it's making your bed or whether it's drinking 2 liters of water, that you've achieved that goal, so you get that sense of belief and self-worth, and then once you've got that structure, it sort of takes away the distractions, doesn't it? Whether that's social media, whether that's getting mixed up with the wrong groups, and being able to focus your attention and staying in your lane, I suppose, because in the day of now, we've got so many social media elements, like your TikToks, your Instagrams. I think there's even more coming up now as well, isn't there? Where people will look and they'll compare themselves. And I was talking to a coach the other day, and he said, why would someone want to come and work with me? Nobody knows who I am. And I just said to him, I said, look, understand why you're doing it, and just showcase what you can do. And it doesn't matter whether you're a coach, a footballer, an office worker, a baker. If you can showcase and present to people what it is that you do, people will buy into you, and they'll give you the opportunities. Because let's face it, there's players in the Premier League now that shouldn't. We've all got opinions, and they shouldn't be playing for whatever reason. Whether it's because they're lazy, they don't believe in playing the way that we want to be. We're all armchair managers, aren't we? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Harry Kane, he's got his critics. He's a great goal scorer. He's Premier League all-time goal scorer, I think, record goal scorer, I think it is. But there's still elements of his game that people will critique. And I think, to be honest with you, every single player, regardless whether they're £1 million signings, £100 million signings, they've got the pros, they've got the cons, and they can't be everything at once. And I suppose when it comes to the behavioural side of it, again, it is understanding and accepting where you are at right now, isn't it? That's going to allow you to progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Acceptance is key. You spoke earlier on about purpose. Having a purpose, having a desire, knowing why you want to do something is so important. Like you said, a lot of players, so many players are talented, like super talented, like uber talented, and if they don't have that purpose, they don't have that desire, they can fall off. It's as simple as that. And you can translate that into life as well. A lot of people who don't have a purpose, or who no longer have a purpose or a desire, you see them fall off. So yeah, you're spot on. It's so important to accept where you are and what's happened to you, and then it's all about, which is like the past and maybe parts of the present, and then that burning desire, that burning purpose to kick on in the present, which will propel you sort of towards the future. So yeah, absolutely, you're spot on. Those things are absolutely key.
It is brilliant. So when it comes to working with the youth athletes, what's your sort of initial interaction with anyone that wants to come and work with you? Normally, is it a case of they come in and have like an assessment, or is it almost like talk us through your induction, if you wouldn't mind, of any players that might want to work with you going forwards?
Sure. So a lot of players do reach out, or parents do reach out via social media channels or the website. I think the website helps. This is where we've got a lot of our results, and it explains about a lot more kind of what we do. But yeah, first of all, it's to reach out. We'll have a chat. We'll see where they're at, see where they want to go, and then think about putting those steps in place in order to get them there We'll often get them an idea of, as I say, kind of where they're at the moment, what it is that they need, where they want to be, and what it is that they need to do to get there. And then from that point on, it's that simple conversation of like, do you want to get started? Like, is this what you want to do? Are you committed to doing this, to achieving this, and believing that you can do it? And once they're on board, then we get going. It is. I've made it kind of sound a little bit simple, but it is quite simple. It's players who want to be committed, parents who want to be committed to the cause and to the process. And often we do find that out in the chats that we do have. But once we've established often where they're at, I think that helps the player, that helps the parents, because as you say, some coaches will just say, yeah, I'll work with you. Let's get started tomorrow or the next day. And, this is the charge, and I'll see you here and meet you here. And for me, that just doesn't work.
No, I totally agree with you there. There has to be an onboarding process, because like we keep going on about, we've got to get to know each other and build that trust first, because if you're not the right fit, then it's going to be wrong. I mean, I had a player who was playing in League Two, and he came and he had a biomechanics assessment. He wanted to just come and work on his athletic endurance. We did the biomechanics assessment. I said, look, there's no way I'm going to be preparing you for building aerobic endurance for the next at least few weeks, because we need to focus on getting that muscular imbalance between your hamstring and quads. And then lo and behold, he left after that, and I was like, do you know what? That's not a problem at all. I said it would have been great having a pro player on me seat and work a bit more. But that said, if he can't buy into the program, and I'm not going to be able to help him, so we're not going to be able to help each other. So it's not a good fit. It's better if he sort of goes on his own way. So it's all good. So it's been really interesting. I mean, it's bizarre how time flies as we're having good convos, and something we could go on about for quite a while. So anyone that's wanting to work with you, find out a bit more about it, and obviously have a chat and network as well, because I think one thing I do want to do with the podcast is network other coaches and professionals and even players. Where can people get in touch with you and to connect?
Yeah, so to connect with me directly, it's at Euon Brown. So that's EUON, and then Brown is in the colour, all one word. So that's Facebook, that's Instagram. Those are my main channels. If you want to see and have a look at some of our results and a little bit of a read up about what we do, then that's Pro Sports Cybernetics. So Pro Sports with an S on the end, and Cybernetics. That's all one word. So prosportscybernetics.com. Other than that, it's probably just seeing me in and about at these kind of ceremonies, or you might see me pop up briefly at a pro club. But yeah, those are the channels that you need to get at if you want to get in contact with me.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. Well, we'll link those. Addresses down below, so obviously people can, so guys, you can actually get in touch with you indirectly and everything. And make sure you do follow me on Instagram. There's some fantastic content on there. Do connect and do interact. He is a wealth of knowledge and experience, and it is really good for me. It's been really good to have a chat with you today, and thanks very much for your time. And hopefully we can book another podcast in moving forward, and talk about this, because there's so many subjects in football, isn't there? We can talk about, from behaviour to athletic development to life stories, case studies. The list goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, that's it. And I've got stories for days as well. So it would be good to connect again. But thank you very much for having me, top man.
It's my pleasure. Well, thanks very much, my friend. And guys, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. Please share the podcast with your network. We do like to help as many people as we can. And thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.